Today, Matt Walsh Show, Democrats pull off a clean sweep in Tuesday's elections, putting a foreign communist in charge of New York City and voting for a man in Virginia who fantasized about murdering his political opponents. What can we learn from this? What should we be doing going forward? We'll talk about that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show. There's a reason I'm proud to say Pure Talk is my wireless company, because they don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk, especially when it comes to supporting our veterans. This month, Pure Talk is choosing to support Canines for Warriors, an incredible organization that rescues and trains dogs, then pairs them with veterans struggling with PTSD. These are men and women who serve with honor, but when they come home, that brotherhood, that support network they had in the military too often disappears. Canines for Warriors steps up to fill that gap, giving these heroes purpose, companionship, and healing. And that's exactly why Pure Talk, a veteran-led company, supports them. Choose a wireless company who shares your values with talk, text, and plenty of 5G data for just $25 a month. You could also be saving a whole lot of money. I have a Pure Talk phone, and I love it. Besides it working great, it's nice to know that I'm supporting a company that supports my values, our values. So go to puretalk.com/Walsh to make the switch today. Again, go to puretalk.com/Walsh and switch to America's wireless company, Pure Talk. Yesterday was the single most clarifying day in American politics since the election of Donald Trump in 2016. Now, when I say clarifying, I don't mean that it was the most consequential day or most important day in American politics. There have been plenty of days that were far more important in terms of their raw impact on millions of people over the last decade or so. But no day has been anywhere near as illuminating as this one in recent years. No one day has done a better job of showing us where the battle lines are, what's important and what's not, at a time when pretty much every prominent commentator and politician on the right is picking a wildly different target. No less than 2 months ago, one of the leading Republicans in the Senate, a man I respect, was going after the President of the United States for not reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Hasn't the president heard of the fictional character Atticus Finch, asked Senator Rand Paul as the Pentagon sent drug traffickers to the bottom of the ocean. Meanwhile, some conservatives, including some well-known ones, have been obsessively attacking me, in some cases calling for my termination because I've called for unity on the right in the face of our common enemies on the left. And of course, over the last few weeks, most prominently, we've watched the right-wing commentariat rip each other to shreds over offensive group chats and podcast guests and so on. Well, congratulations. While conservatives have been arguing with one another and administering purity tests to determine who's a legitimate part of the movement and who's not, a unified Democrat Party just elected an attorney general who openly fantasizes about murdering us, watching our children die in our arms. Less than 2 months after Charlie Kirk was shot to death in front of the entire world, Democrat voters backed a candidate who wants more conservatives to die because of their political views. They also elected as governor a demented CIA operative who grins when she's asked about her support for this attorney general live on the debate stage. Additionally, Democrats flipped something like 10 seats in the Virginia House, ensuring that these two sociopaths at the top of the ticket can do whatever they want once they take office. And we know what Jay Jones wants to do. He's told us. In fact, every single county in the state of Virginia, even the ones that ultimately went Republican, shifted heavily towards Democrats last night. You can see those results on the screen right now. This was a total blowout in the state of Virginia, which is home to more than 1 million immigrants concentrated in the north and hundreds of thousands of government employees who are concentrated in the south. Those are people who are furious that their government salaries, which are really a form of welfare in most cases, aren't being paid out due to the government shutdown. And now they're making it clear that if conservatives don't want to pay them, then conservatives deserve to die, basically. And meanwhile, as Republicans feuded relentlessly with one another, Democrats also elected a Muslim socialist from Uganda for the explicit purpose of destroying the nerve center of American capitalism. You'll get your government-run grocery stores and your free buses open to every vagrant and schizophrenic in the city, says Zohran Mamdani. But of course, you also have to pay for all of these free perks in the form of higher taxes. And you won't find Mamdani riding on one of those buses or standing in any of the bread lines without armed guards, because despite what his platform might suggest, he's not anywhere near as stupid as he looks. So what happens when New York runs out of people to tax? What happens when they all flee to Florida? What happens when free buses means that no one can ride the bus anymore because it's not safe? Mamdani and everyone else in the Democrat Party, they know the answer to these questions. The answer is that New York will transform into Uganda. Now, ask any conservative and they'll describe that outcome as a failure. But Democrats don't see it that way, and neither do their voters. And here's why. Imagine for a moment that you live in Kenya. And like most Kenyans, you make about $1,000 per year. Yes, $1,000 per year. And then imagine that, like most Kenyans, you don't even have access to clean drinking water, much less reliable social services. And that's what you're used to. And then imagine that one member of your family manages to get to America. They fake an asylum claim and move into an apartment in New York where they don't pay any rent thanks to some pro bono legal services offered by a nonprofit or a law firm. What do you think their top priority is going to be? Now, well, obviously, they're going to look after their family back home. And their home is Kenya. They're going to collect welfare from the U.S. taxpayer, mail it to their relatives overseas. And they're going to support whatever candidate will allow more of their family members to come to New York and partake in the city's vast array of free services, which are not really free because they're paid for by Americans who actually have jobs. Now, they don't care, not even for a second, that New York City will ultimately collapse as a result of this. In their eyes, the worst case scenario is that New York will eventually resemble a country like Kenya, a place they're familiar with. They're from there. That's their baseline. And they're not afraid of it. And besides, they have no tie to New York or to the country. They don't care about it. They don't love New York. They don't love America. They just got here. So if that city falls apart, they can just move somewhere else. And when that new place is drained of all of its resources and it collapses, well, they can just move on again. And so on and so on and so on. Ask the people voting for these candidates in any state that held elections last night, and they will admit all of this. I'm not speculating. They'll tell you this. Just ask them. So consider this interview that aired on CNN yesterday featuring a woman from Kenya named Mariam Jaradi. Now, this woman doesn't say that she supports Abigail Spanberger in Virginia because she likes her position on corporate tax rates or something. Instead, she supports Abigail Spanberger because Abigail Spanberger, is going to allow more foreigners from Kenya to enter the country. That's it. Watch.
I always vote since I became a citizen, and that was 20 years ago. And I migrated from Kenya originally. My family is back home in Kenya, and how I see how things are going on, like with families being separated, as a human being, as a mother, separating families, especially children, from their mothers or fathers. I don't believe in that. So that made me come out and also come and vote.
So this woman has apparently lived in America for nearly 2 decades. She's still fixated on immigration as her top issue. She still refers to Kenya as her home. She's voting based on the best interests of Kenyans. That's all there is to it. I mean, it really is as simple as that. Do you think she cares in any way about the fact that Abigail Spanberger embraced Jay Jones after he joked about murdering the children of conservative politicians? A joke that, was actually not really a joke. You think she cares about that at all? You think she'd spend even 1 second thinking about that? Do you think she'd flinch if Spanberger herself had literally murdered the child of a conservative politician? Of course not. I mean, the object of this woman and anyone like her is to advance their own national and ethnic interests. They don't pause to consider your interests. They don't care about you. They don't care about your country. They live here, but they don't care about it. Together with liberal women, foreigners now constitute the bulk of the Democrat Party's voting base. And this is a voting bloc that's extraordinarily potent and destructive. It's immune to any kind of, negotiation. The foreigners are voting based on their own national and ethnic interests. And the liberal women are voting based on, largely appeals to emotion and vibes. They're basically getting their entire political philosophy from those yard signs that say, no person is illegal. And one of those voters just spoke to Fox. Listen.
I think what's really important and standing out for me right now is if we can take ourselves like a high level, like not say immigration, not say economy, not say all the hot talking points, and just ask ourselves, how are we treating our neighbors? Like, how are we treating one another? And is it okay that yesterday, on Saturday, 42 million of our neighbors no longer can feed themselves? Is it okay that our neighbors are getting taken off the streets by ICE? Is it okay that gender-affirming care is being taken from young people who really need it to survive? Is it okay that the Supreme Court has now justified racial profiling? That's not how I want to treat my neighbor.
Now, New York has been in a state of decline for many, many years. John Rocker's infamous interview with Sports Illustrated, where he railed against all the foreigners making the city impossible to live in, was more than 25 years ago. But until recently, liberal women didn't have enough votes to sway elections based on vapid, DNC-issued talking points and bumper sticker slogans. But what's changed is that in 2025, yet another reliably Democrat demographic has moved into New York. As of the most recent estimates from the mayor's office, 1 in 5 New Yorkers can't even speak the English language. More than 60% of children in New York live in a household with at least one foreign-born family member. Roughly 40% of New Yorkers were not born in this country. Half of all New Yorkers speak a language other than English at home. And these are all conservative estimates, by the way. New York, as I've said before, is not an American city anymore. Nearly 50% of the population of Queens was not born in this country. Watch.
I think Queens is so interesting, Sean. You look at this, just for our viewers at home. Like, no matter where you're watching in America tonight, just stop and think about this for a moment. This is one of 5 boroughs, okay, in Queens. It's not even the most populated. In this particular borough, maybe you fly in the JFK, maybe you fly in the LaGuardia, population 2.4 million. Foreign-born, 48%. Languages spoken in Queens alone, 160 different languages. When you study New York City, you're studying a country. Sean, you can literally cross the street and you find people with different ethnicity, different religion. They come from different parts of the world, and they certainly vote in very different ways. And you do not have to go far in that neighborhood or on that street to find that. I just saying, very interesting to study.
Now, these numbers represent a drastic shift in more ways than one. And don't listen to anyone who tries to tell you, oh, it's always been this way. New York has always had a significant immigrant population. It's been this way for many generations. Well, yes, but not all immigration is the same. These immigrants are now coming from very different parts of the world compared to where they were coming from 100 years ago. This chart prepared by VDARE demonstrates this, as you can see here. And according to the U.S. Census, New York was 98% white in 1910. 98%. 90% in 1950. 77% white in 1970. Then it dropped to 52% in 1980. 44% by 1990. By 2020, it was down to 32%. So from almost everybody is white to a small minority, 32% in the span of about 100 years. Now, that is a demographic transformation that's inevitably going to result in massive cultural changes, and those changes have not been positive. That's just a fact. So anyone who says, oh, you're doing identity politics, even conservatives, well, this is identity politics. We need to be past this. Oh, shut up. This is just the reality. It's a thing that's happening. Okay? We got to talk about the things that are happening in the country. Zohran Mamdani's talking about it during his victory speech last night. Zohran Mamdani made all this very explicit. Watch.
We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
We will prove that there is no problem too large for the government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about. Well, it's hard to think of a more un-American and delusional statement than that. Right? You want to talk about cultural shifts. It is hard to think of a less American idea than that. There is no problem too small or too large for the government to solve. Imagine hearing a line like that and applauding without any hint of irony. Imagine taking a look at the employees of your local DMV and thinking to yourself, you know what? This is great. I'd love to put these people in charge of every single aspect of my life, no matter how insignificant it may be. I'd love to have slack-jawed government bureaucrats resolve every dispute I'll ever have with anyone. I'd love to have government bureaucrats tell me when I'm allowed to go to the grocery store. I'd love to have them run the grocery store and tell me when I'm allowed to go and what I can buy there. Please, DMV lady, fix all my problems. I see you sitting there and I think to myself, you are the person who could solve all my problems. Please fix them. I put all of my trust in you. Has there ever been a serious person in the history of this country who has genuinely believed that the government could solve literally every problem, both big and small, as Mamdani just promised explicitly? Well, the answer is no, of course. But Mamdani was not elected by serious people. At least he was not elected by Americans. No American has ever felt that way. You know, in that speech, Mamdani is invoking basically the inverse of Ronald Reagan's famous line, which is that, you know, the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. That's a very well-trod line. It's a funny line. At the time, it was a funny line because everybody immediately understood what Reagan was getting at. Well, now we have a third world communist, unironically, playing the role of the guy from the government uttering the 9 most terrifying words, except he's now playing to a crowd that finds those words comforting rather than terrifying. Well, there's a reason for that. Again, think about who his voters are. Liberal women and foreigners. That's basically it. I mean, that's pretty much the whole thing. Well, liberal women desperately desire to be taken care of. They want the government to come in and provide for them and hug them closely and whisper reassuring words. These women have rejected the natural female impulse ingrained over millennia to go out and find a man who can do those things for them. But the impulse remains. And now they look to satisfy it with the government. They are, you know, strong, independent women who don't need no man. Instead, they need a vast, faceless, incompetent bureaucracy to solve all their problems instead. And as for the foreigners, well, many of them are from the third world where the government does control everything or tries to, and where no alternative is really imaginable, right? Where things like civil liberties, like nobody talks about that. It's just doesn't come up. Reagan's joke isn't a joke anymore. People from many third world countries who are now living in the U.S. really believe it. And during his speech, Mamdani made sure to mention many of those third world countries by name. Watch.
I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties.
Well, you know, he goes through the whole list, and you notice he doesn't mention Americans. That's the one group that doesn't even make the list because he doesn't care about them. New York is not an American city anymore, and he's not playing to that crowd at all. Even the liberal white women didn't get a mention there. But I'm sure it's just an oversight. I'm sure it's not an indication that Democrats are embracing ethnic nationalism for every racial group except white people because, they openly despise white people. That would just be ridiculous. And even if they are, we don't want to talk about it or point it out, because then we're playing identity politics. And you wouldn't want to do that. So, that means that you just have to, when the left does this this blatant anti-white routine, that's just the polite thing is just to not say anything about it. And if you do, you're just as bad as they are. This is what I'm told anyway. But, as dire as the races in New York and Virginia were, it needs to be said that the problem for the GOP is much bigger than these two states. Republican incumbents lost in both races in Georgia for public service commissioner for the first time in more than 2 decades. The Supreme Court races in Pennsylvania were not encouraging for Democrats either, with Democrats, or for Republicans rather, with Democrats overwhelmingly retaining all of their seats there. Put simply, last night was a rout for the conservative movement and for Americans more broadly. And no other way to say it. We're no longer talking about hypotheticals anymore. We're not discussing polls. The enemies of this country have just seized a great deal of power. Now, it doesn't mean we're doomed, right? It doesn't mean all is lost. I know there are plenty of people say, well, don't listen to the doomsayers. It's not such a big deal. Yeah, it's not doom, but it is a serious situation. I don't know what to tell you. And don't listen to anyone claiming otherwise. An Islamic third world communist taking over our largest and most important city, that's a big deal. It is. As much as you might not want it to be, it is. And many people will die as a result. Many people's lives will become much worse and people will die. Make no mistake about it. Our economy will suffer in ways that we can't even begin to comprehend. That's the other point for people who say, well, it's New York. Like let New York fall into, let it collapse into rubble. That's New York's problem. Well, I can't really go along with that. Like I can't get myself to not care because that is our city, or it's supposed to be. It's not an American city anymore, but it should be. And also, again, this is the nerve center of our economy. But you have to understand that if New York collapses, that has an impact on everybody. That's not the kind of thing where you can just say, oh yeah, I live 100 miles away. Has no effect on me. I don't care if you live 2,000 miles away. This stuff matters. It affects all of our lives. And the rule of law will continue to erode as even more violent criminals are unleashed on the public. All of that will happen. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm just giving you the facts. So what are we going to do about it? Well, I'll tell you what we need to do. And I'm sorry for being really simplistic here, but we need to win. Okay, winning, it's not the only thing that matters, but it is the first thing that matters. If you don't win, then all the other stuff that matters doesn't matter. You have to win. And right now, a lot of people are kind of drawing lines on the right, putting some of us on that side, some of us on this side. These lines are drawn. I get put on all different sides, depending on who's talking, which is a lot of fun. But here's the line that we really need. Okay, if I'm going to draw a line, here's where I'm drawing it. Conservatives who have actually shown an ability to win and move the needle culturally and politically on one side, versus conservatives who have never contributed meaningfully to any victory at all. Like, that's the line that I care about right now. And the folks in the latter group, the losers, they're really loud, especially loud now, but it's always been unclear like why we should ever listen to anything they say. Anytime any conservative with a platform goes out and says, this is what we should do, you should ask them. You should say, okay, well, show me your scoreboard. What have you won? Like, what have you contributed at all to any win at all? Have you succeeded in advancing the conservative cause in any form at all ever? Show me that. And if you haven't, then it's like, well, I don't care what you say. You don't know what you're talking about. It's not, this nothing personal. But that's the way it is. And after last night's elections, it's clear that we should just not listen to those people ever again. And again, it's nothing personal. It's not a cheap shot or anything like that. I'm not disavowing them or canceling anyone. I don't want to expel anyone from the movement at all. You know, they're still conservatives. I even like some of them. Some of our lovable losers who are constantly running their mouths but have never done anything. I even like some of them. All I'm saying is that when it comes to figuring out how to win, which again is always the first and most urgent priority, they don't have much to offer. They don't know how to win. We've got a lot of people who are talking a lot and saying a lot, but they don't know how to win. They've never done it and never will. They don't have the stomach for it. They don't have the heart or the mind for it. They're too squeamish. They're too weak. They're too desirous of approval from polite society. And so last night, a fractured right was demolished by a unified left, a coalition of leftists, primarily college-educated women and foreigners, all of whom are happy to dance on the graves of dead conservatives. These are people who heard Jay Jones wishing death on us and our children and then flocked to the polls to make him the top law enforcement officer of the state. You know, they didn't subject Jones to any purity test. They didn't denounce and disavow him out of principle. They ignored the complaints from conservatives. They ignored complaints from people like me. Right? And they just went out and won. They heard us demanding that they disavow Jones. And again, I'm one of them. Say, you should disavow him. What he said was terrible. And we were right? What he said was terrible. But the Democrats, they looked at us and said, what? Disavow, what, and lose on purpose? Throw the race? He's our guy. You want us to just, give up, not win? You want us to just lose on purpose because what he said was bad? No, they looked at us and they just laughed at us. And they said, I'm not going to do that. No, we're going to win. They didn't even think about it. Let me tell you something. On the left, not only did they not disavow Jay Jones, there was no conversation about it. It wasn't even a debate. Right? It wasn't even like what would happen with conservatives where you spend 7 weeks just torturing ourselves over it. It was not even a conversation. It's like, well, of course we're not going to. We have to win that race. I mean, we're not going to disavow him and let a Republican take the ball. No, they just said, we're going to go out and win. That's it. Because you got to win. And that's what happened. And they won. So I will repeat the call that made so many people angry at me. And you can be angry at me all you want. I don't really care. In my view, the right must unite against the people who want us dead. We just have to. Our lives are at stake. Our children's futures are at stake. Our nation itself is at stake. They are destroying the country. We are losing the country. We are losing it right now. Yeah, and if the more control they have, they will open up the floodgates even more, and we will just lose it. We won't have a country anymore. So this is not the time for infighting and ankle biting. I'm not saying that there will never be a time necessarily. I'm saying that the time is not now. Even if you can make an argument that, well, we got to have this fight. Well, the time was not these last few weeks in the run-up to the election. Even if I could buy your argument that, this is a fight we had to have it now? We had to have it right when the election is happening? This was the time to do it? Really? No. You got to be smart. You got to be strategic. And if you can't see that now, then I don't know what else to say. We have just been handed a wake-up call, the biggest wake-up call in the recent history of the conservative movement. We should pay attention. We should accelerate mass deportations. We should suspend all migration from the third world, along with all federal assistance to New York and Virginia. As I outlined earlier this week, we should kick every single foreign national off of federal financial assistance completely, effective immediately. which would also have the effect of then you'd have mass self-deportations happening. Because if they can't be here and live off of the taxpayer, then they're not going to want to be here anymore. That's what conservatives need to accomplish if we want to continue existing as a viable political movement. If we want to exist as a country. We don't have to agree with each other. We don't even have to like each other. But we do have to recognize that our greatest threat, the greatest threat to civilization itself, just demolished our candidates last night. These people putting foreign communists in charge of our city, the people lining up to vote for candidates who openly want to murder you, who want to watch your children die in your arms and have said so. That is the greatest threat by far. And it's not even close. What the now sitting Attorney General of Virginia said is worse than anything any conservative has ever said. I mean, that alone. I want to watch the children of my enemies die in their arms. Can you find me a conservative, someone on the right who said anything like that? I want to watch their children die in their arms? I'm not aware of even go to the fringiest fringe you can find. I've never even seen anything like that. And yet the guy that said that on the left is not fringe. He is now the chief law enforcement officer of Virginia. So you try to make your moral equivalencies all you want. I don't see an equivalence. They want to destroy us. And if we don't return the favor, and soon, then none of our disagreements will matter. The foreigners who just voted for Zohran Mamdani and Abigail Spanberger and Omar Fateh, they don't care about the internal squabbling on the right. Neither should we. If we want to have any success in the midterms 1 year from now, staying on message, staying focused, staying disciplined, being unified, this above all else is what will win. And if there's any good news from last night, it's that everybody on the right, everyone who's paying even the slightest bit of attention, must now realize that. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Everybody these days is trying to sell you on miracle supplements, but we here at the Matt Walsh Show believe in real, honest science, and nothing is more essential to your overall health than supporting your liver. I want to introduce you guys to a product that is backed by research. Dose for Your Liver is actually a clinically backed supplement that comes as a daily 2-ounce shot. And honestly, it tastes like fresh squeezed orange juice, no weird supplement flavor. Think of your liver as your body's ultimate filter. It's working overtime, processing everything you consume while juggling 500 daily functions like energy production, digestion, fat metabolism, and vitamin storage. But when it gets overworked, you feel it. And that's where Dose helps. It helps cleanse your liver of unwanted stressors that are slowing it down and supports your daily liver function so everything can run smoothly. And get this, it's 0 sugar, 0 junk, 0 calories. When you make Dose part of your daily routine, you're looking at reduced sluggishness, no more brutal midday crashes, support for your metabolism, and aid for your daily digestion. Best part, this isn't just marketing hype. Dose has real results backed by 2 double-blind placebo-controlled studies showing its positive impact on liver enzyme levels. So it's the real deal. New customers can save 35% on your first month of subscription by going to dosedaily.co/Walsh or entering Walsh to checkout. That's dosedaily.co/Walsh for 35% off your first month subscription. You guys have heard me talk about the bearskin hoodie. Well, the smart people are locking in their winter gear now because this is hands down the best time to prep for the coming winter. Don't wait any longer than you already have. Bearskin is running a 6% off deal right now, but only if you get your hoodie early. This hoodie, which I am wearing right now, in fact, is built like a tank. Micro fleece, 10 pockets with a clean, rugged fit that looks awesome. I think it looks great, and which is hard to do. It's hard to make something look good on me, but somehow they pull it off. And also, it's very comfortable, and it's got utility. I mean, it's practical as well. So it combines all the things you want: style, practicality. and cover. Plus, it zips right into the heavy storm rain jacket to become 100% waterproof when you need it. Now, as you can see, I'm, as I said, wearing my bearskin hoodie right now. And if you want to get your own bearskin hoodie, I mean, if you're inspired by how dashingly handsome I look in this, then do yourself a favor. Text the word Matt to 36912 to lock in your 60% off. Again, text Matt to 36912. You get a link sent straight to your phone so you can check it out later if you're busy right now, but you want to get on this right away. You get free U.S. shipping, fast delivery, and you've locked in your winter gear already, and that is a win-win. So don't wait till you're freezing to realize that your hoodie sucks. You need to get a new one. Get a bearskin right now while it's 60% off. Text Matt to 36912. Do it now. Okay, let's check in on the fish cam. We haven't checked the fish cam. Is the fish still there? It is there. Good. Still there. We need a fish cam today. This is a fish cam emergency. Maybe that's why we got wiped out in the election. Not enough time spent with the fish cam. Really, this is on me. This is. I'll take the fall on this one. I'll take the blame. If only America had been able to spend more time with the fish cam. That's what's going to unify us. This is what's going to heal us all. The fish. The mighty fish. This is it. This is the banner that we must march under. Is the fish. Okay, enough of that. So just one headline today. We already covered like 4 of the headlines in the opening monologue. But I haven't had a chance to talk about this story yet. I've had it for a few days. And so I wanted to talk about a little bit. I'll read the report now from the Post-Millennial. A gym in Los Angeles terminated the membership of a woman who complained about a man using the women's locker room. Tish Hyman posted on X about the experience of having a man follow her into the women's room and call her a only to have her gym membership canceled. On Sunday, Hyman posted, "Today he saw me walk into the women's room, followed me, and called me a I ran into the locker room, I ran out into the locker room crying and screaming. This is why we can't be quiet, because people need to know what's happening. Thank you to the men who helped me today." In a follow-up, Hyman wrote, "Gold's Gym terminated my membership after the man was escorted out by police." So video was circulating, says the article, showing Hyman angrily calling out the gym in the lobby. We have that video. Let's play it.
Gold's Gym! Men! Grown men with big in the women's locker room. And that's why I'm getting kicked out. And I want to make sure the girls know. So everybody saw that man in the locker room. No one's saying. And I'm done with it. It's stupid. It's dangerous. Me naked in front of a man without my permission. But I ain't the one who gets kicked out the gym, y'all. I'm terminated for not wanting men in the locker room.
Okay, so there she's there in the lobby, kind of making a scene, rightfully so. That's exactly how she should have responded, which we'll discuss. But I also want to play, so she also posted another video talking about her experience and describing what happened. Let's play that.
I just had the worst experience ever at the gym, at Gold's Gym. And I think this is probably happening at gyms across America. We're like, trans women are going into the women's locker room and not really caring about how women feel about it. And it's really hurtful, yo. Like, how you gonna say you wanna be a woman or that you are a woman, but you don't give a how women feel? Today I was naked in the locker room. I turn around and there's a man there in boy clothes, lip gloss, standing there looking at me. I'm butt naked. So the first thing I think is maybe there's a worker in here. Maybe I missed a sign. I say the word sir to say, "Sir, what are you doing in here?" He goes, "Don't talk to me. I'm a woman. I have a right to be in here." Immediately, I'm pissed because I'm butt naked. I feel violated. I feel like weird. Like, I don't want to deal with this, right? So the girls are walking in and they're seeing the commotion and they actually chime in and say, "Yo, I don't know why he's in here. He's not supposed to be in here." And then I talk to the people that work at Gold's Gym and they don't really have anything to do. They just like, "Oh, we can file a report about it, incident report." What the is going on? Like, listen, how can you say you're a woman or you want to be a woman and you don't care how women feel? That's nothing more manly than not giving a about how women feel, I'd like to think. And I get it, like, everybody has their own things, and I don't want to say that I know everything about gay rights or trans rights. I'm a lesbian. I've been a lesbian my whole life. I treat people how I want to be treated regardless of whatever their sexual orientation is or whatever they decide.
So, right, so her membership was terminated, even though obviously she's totally 1,000% in the right. And I know it surprises you to hear me say that. You were wondering where I'd stand on this. I know you heard about the story and thought, man, I need Matt Walsh to weigh in so I can find out what he thinks about this. It could go either way. You never know. Well, yes, I'm opposed to the man in the women's locker room waving his genitals around in front of a bunch of confused and alarmed women. I'm very much opposed to that, as you probably did expect. But I want to focus on two other points. So first of all, the response from this woman, Tish, is exactly correct. The only part that she's wrong about is when she started clarifying that she's not transphobic and she's a lesbian and all that. You didn't need to do that. It's okay to be transphobic. They were in your locker room, right? When the trans people are coming into your locker room, of course you were afraid. Of course you were phobic. Right? You got a man in the locker room. You're in a state of undress. Yeah, to have a phobia of that, I think, is pretty rational. So that qualifier was not necessary, but everything else was right on the money. She reacting in a horrified, infuriated way, causing a scene, being angry, being offended, like really personally offended in a serious way, not in this kind of frivolous way where people are offended by dumb things, but offended. Like, this is offensive. I'm personally offended. That's how you should react. That's how it should be done. That's a natural, appropriate reaction. And I'll tell you this, if women had reacted this way from the beginning, then the trans movement would have died in the cradle. And I'm not putting all of it on women. Men were cowards on this issue in equal proportion, I would say. But the fact is that if women back in 2013, 14, 15 had just reacted appropriately and naturally to men all of a sudden showing up in their locker rooms and sports teams, that would have been the end of it, really. If men had reacted with the appropriate rage to men showing up in the locker rooms with their wives and daughters, that would have been the end of it. If everyone had not been so worried about being polite and being nice and being accepting, that would have been the end of it. And there is a lesson in that. When the left tries to get you to accept something that you know is wrong, that you know is demented, that you know is unnatural and bizarre and evil, speak up. Right away. Don't just speak up, let loose, get angry. Right? Don't hold back, like be enraged, be disgusted, be horrified in a peaceful way. Be all of those things peacefully. As peaceful as you can be. Now, I mean, if ever a man tried to walk into the bathroom while my wife or daughter were in there, I would not allow it. I would try to use my words to prevent it, but if words fail, well, I'm just not going to allow it. It can't happen. That's just not going to happen. I would prevent it from happening and do what needs to be done to protect my family. But, we want things to be peaceful, and that's what we prefer. So the point is that Tish had it right. And that's just, in that, like from the very beginning, that should have been the first moment that a man walked into a women's locker room. There should have been every woman in the locker room should have been like screaming, "What the hell are you doing in here? Get out of here." Because that's how everybody wants to react, but they held back because of this emotional blackmail and because people want to be polite. It's like using the sort of human instinct to be polite and non-confrontational, I think was twisted against people very successfully by the trans activists for a time anyway. And there's another point too, and it's a point I made before. The trans agenda is losing badly. Now, this happened in California. It still has a stranglehold in California because California is insane. I mean, California is Canada, but warmer. It's Canada. just a warmer version of Canada. We know that. But generally speaking, the trans agenda is losing. And that's why Tish, if you notice, is not being really villainized in the mainstream media. I'm sure she is a little bit, I haven't checked, but it's not in the way that she would have been if this exact same thing happened 5 years ago. If it was 2020 or 2021, Tish would have been public enemy number one in the media because she's a woman screaming at a trans-identified male trying to deprive him of his right to invade her space. It's transphobic. You're a villain. And they would have been all over her for that. And they're not really now. They're mostly ignoring the story because it's a loser for them. And they know that. The trans agenda is losing. And we should really think about why it's losing. This didn't happen by accident. The trans movement didn't just trip and fall off a cliff all by itself one day. No, this was the result of a deliberate effort of opposition, of a coordinated and strategic counteroffensive from the anti-trans ideology side, from Team Sanity, as I have called it. We beat them. Now, not completely, obviously, they still exist, so the fight continues, I think on a smaller scale, but it still continues. But we've won battle after battle, culminating in Trump using the trans issue to get elected in 2024. That wasn't the only reason he got elected, but as Charlie Kirk pointed out, this issue was one of the determining factors. It really was. And Charlie would know. And, he said it himself. So in the exit polls and everything bear that out. So in a very real sense, we beat them. How did we do it? Conservatives should be looking at this, looking at one of the most significant and one of the only major cultural victories by the conservative movement in our lifetimes. We have not had that many. We have not had that many victories. This is one of the only ones. A clear, decisive cultural victory where the left tried to do something and we beat it back. And now, they're not totally giving up either. They're not going to just wave the white flag and say, never mind about the trans stuff. But we did beat them. I mean, even look at this last election. These candidates were not going around talking about trans rights. Now, if you ask them about it, they like Zoran Mamdani. Did he ever talk about it? I mean, I'm sure maybe he probably did. It probably came up, but he definitely wasn't running on it. They were running away from it. Abigail Spanberger went almost the entire campaign and avoided ever even answering the question about whether men should be in the women's room until she finally sort of did because she was backed into a corner. And even then, it was like a very roundabout way. She was talking about it in a way to avoid being clipped, to avoid giving anyone any sound bites. So we should be looking at that and we should be saying, how did that happen? What was the strategy? And this is what kind of boggles my mind, that there's very little of that on the right. There's very little of this kind of post-mortem. And I mean, there's post-mortems all the time. Like every time we lose, there's a post-mortem. And I just did want to start the show. And that's important too, because like when you lose, you got to look at it and say, how did it happen? But on the rare occasion we win, there's never, we don't go back and say, well, how did that, that's interesting. How did we pull that off? Well, we should, because you can take lessons from that and take them into the next battle. So what was the strategy? Well, the strategy was essentially to do the exact opposite of everything that milquetoast moderate establishment conservatism told us to do. Do exactly the opposite. We ignored them at every turn and did precisely the opposite, and we won. Now, of course, moderate establishment conservatives types have jumped on the anti-trans ideology bandwagon. Now that it's safe, right? Now that it's popular. It's popular for a reason. It's popular as a result of our efforts. But now that it is, they're on board. So it can be easy to forget that this was not a moderate establishment conservatism victory. Now there's no risk, like getting up and saying, get men out of women's sports. There's no real risk in saying that. It's a very popular position. There's not a lot of pushback anymore. There's a little bit, but it's, again, the left is running away from it. They really don't want to talk about it. So it's like coast is clear, and this is what the useless conservatives do. They wait on the sidelines and they let everybody, they let the rest of us fight it out and take all the get bruised and bloodied and take all the hits. And then when it looks like, okay, you're winning, the score's 57-3, then they say, okay, coach, put me in. And they score like a useless garbage time touchdown, and then they expect to be carried off the field like Rudy. So that's kind of how it goes. But still the question is, so how did this victory happen? Well, to begin with, we chose to fight on a cultural issue, a culture war issue. Chose that fight. The moderate mainstream said that we shouldn't. I mean, I'm old enough to remember 10 years ago being lectured by many people on the right that the trans stuff is a losing issue. Nobody cares. It's already lost. Move on. You can't win it. It's culture war. Nobody cares. No one wants to talk. And this is what they always say about the culture issues, about so-called, quote-unquote, social issues. And we ignored them. And then what? Well, we were aggressive. We were focused. We were even sometimes kind of mean and mocking. Because the thing that we're fighting, trans ideology, is evil and dangerous. And evil must be mocked. We didn't worry about tone policing. The milquetoast crew, they worried about it. They were tone policing. But we ignored that. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I did a monologue about Dylan Mulvaney on the show. And it's the main thing that got me demonetized on YouTube. I got demonetized for a year after that and lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars because of this one, mostly because of this one monologue. Wouldn't change a thing, though. But I was very blunt and direct in how I addressed him, Dylan Mulvaney. And they were conservatives calling me out, didn't like the tone, didn't like how mean I was being. Yeah, easy to forget about this stuff. And some of the ones that were doing the tone policing now would be embarrassed by it. They don't want to admit it, but they were at the time. They were coming out and saying, I don't really think this, we really shouldn't be using a tone like this. This is gonna turn off the voters. Well, if we're talking like this, we're gonna lose in 2024. And they also said that we shouldn't even talk about Dylan Mulvaney. Why are we talking about him at all? It doesn't matter. Well, those of us in the fight, we knew better. We knew that Dylan Mulvaney was an example. He had offered himself up as a mascot for the trans movement. And we looked at that strategically and we said, okay, great. You want to be a mascot for this thing? Okay, let's do that then. And so we hung him around the necks of our opponents, this weird guy who was like going out and 100 days of girlhood or whatever it was, and prancing around, pretending to be like a 12-year-old girl. And so we said, well, okay, yeah, I mean, this guy wants to be like the mascot for this whole movement, and I think he's a great mascot for it, actually. So while you had other conservatives saying, you're making him more popular, stop talking about him. Well, we knew strategic, like this is a good strategy. Hung him around the neck of Bud Light. Or really, they hung him around their own necks, and we pointed it out. Bud Light lost billions of dollars. That was another point where milquetoast moderate conservatives, a lot of like the former liberal types, those guys, they said that focusing on Bud Light was a mistake. It was dumb. Cancel culture. But we knew we could make an example out of Bud Light. If we made them pay the price, all the other major corporations would see. Was Bud Light like the worst offender of when it comes to wokeness? Not even close. They weren't the worst offender. But they were vulnerable. They were susceptible. Right? They were, it's like we're not going after the fastest, strongest gazelle. Here's one we can take down. And we did. They lost billions and billions of dollars. And the fact that eventually they recovered, that doesn't matter. You want other corporations to see what happened to them. And if they see it, then they're going to back off all of their gay pride celebrations, or at least they're going to tone it down significantly. And they did. That's exactly what happened. And we also changed laws. We approached, we approached the fight from every direction, socially, legally. You got to change the laws to protect kids, but we also know that the law is a teacher. The law provides a bully pulpit. Laws help to change people's minds about things. Law matters. Left knows that. It's not just about the practical effect of the law. I mean, it is that, but it's also the cultural, the social impact of the law itself. And then you cover it from every angle: the culture, corporate world, legislation. And we knew we had to empower the public, empower people to stand up and speak up. That's the other point behind the tone, by the way. There's actually a strategy behind the tone. Like, it's not all just venting. It's one of the reasons why I'm so strident and aggressive in my tone. And I've been lectured for my tone for as long as I've had a platform, for a very long time. Well, there's a reason why I am this way. Now, part of it is that, I'm a stubborn, hard-headed asshole for sure, but I don't deny that. But people like me, we kind of serve a purpose. We're kind of annoying sometimes. I get it. You get a little sick of us. But, using the trans stuff as an example, we knew that, well, if we speak out very aggressively, even kind of meanly sometimes, even kind of mocking sometimes, that provides cover for everybody else. Because normal people can look at that and say, okay, well, this guy's got a big platform, and look at how he's talking about this. Look at what he's saying. Well, he's going way farther than I even would. And then they feel a lot more comfortable speaking up in ways that are tend to be like much gentler and less aggressive. So you go even farther, speak about it even more stridently. Then everybody else who's a little bit closer to the middle, it gives them cover. It gives them cover to come closer to you. And if you have a platform on the right, that's one of the primary services you can provide. It's like one of the only services, really. So the point here is not gloating or whatever. I mean, now is certainly not the time for gloating. Okay, we just got our asses handed to us. So, but that is the point. The point is to learn the lessons. And I still don't think we have. To learn the lessons not just of defeat, but of victory. And they're right here. And they can be duplicated. Did you know that when your metabolism is working properly, you'll feel the benefits in literally every aspect of your life? I have found a valuable tool that gives me insights to create a healthy metabolism for my body. It's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach that measures your metabolism just by breathing into it. Each morning, one breath tells you whether you are burning fat or carbs, and the app creates a personalized nutrition plan for my day based on that reading. You can also check in before and after meals or workouts to see what's happening in your body in real time. And Lumen gives you tailored tips to optimize your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, and your stress management. My producer, McKenna, has been using Lumen for a couple of years now, and has been really impressed with all the information it gives her. It's really easy to use and helps her decide what meals to cook for her and her family for the day. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how you turn food into fuel. Since it's at the center of everything that your body does, a healthy metabolism means easier weight management, better energy, improved fitness results, and quality sleep. Lumen gives me personalized recommendations to optimize my metabolic health, and it can help you too. Winter is the perfect season to build strength from within. Stay energized, stay resilient, and take charge of your metabolism. Go to lumen.me/Walsh to get an additional 10% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/Walsh for 10% off on top of any offers or sales running on the website. Now, this may be shocking for some people to hear, but at Daily Wire, we don't always agree. Friendly Fire, is the show where Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, and myself, we all get together to disagree live for the entire internet to see and comment on what could possibly go wrong. Well, a new episode of Friendly Fire premieres in 2 weeks on Daily Wire Plus, and this time we'll also world premiere the official trailer for the Pendragon cycle, The Rise of the Merlin, only on Friendly Fire, November 19th, 7 p.m. Eastern on Daily Wire Plus. Now let's get to the daily cancellation. A couple weeks ago, I did a fairly lengthy monologue that I had been working on for some time about the death of the monoculture and how pop culture and, by extension, celebrity basically no longer exists. Another, there are a million celebrities with millions of followers, and almost none of them have any influence on the culture at all. There are now so many streaming services and social media platforms that it's entirely possible for a talented actor or singer to become very successful while also remaining unknown to the vast majority of the general public. There's no modern equivalent to the craze that surrounded shows like Seinfeld or Friends or the ubiquity of movies like Titanic. And there probably never will be again. Now, the death of the monoculture is generally a bad thing in my view, as I've already outlined. But there is at least one positive aspect of it. Celebrities truly have no political influence anymore. Now, in the past, that was not the case. The Rat Pack and Sinatra helped put JFK in the White House. One study from the University of Maryland supposedly found that Oprah's endorsement all by itself resulted in 1 million votes for Barack Obama in the primaries back in 2008. People got their copies of Oprah magazine, saw the endorsement, and they went out to vote. Now, of course, nobody reads Oprah magazine anymore because it doesn't exist, nor does anyone read any magazines of any kind. There are simply too many ways to access information and too many celebrities offering their takes for any particular person's opinion to really matter, no matter how rich or powerful that person might be. So this has been true for some time, but celebrities have pretended not to realize it, probably because they want to keep selling their endorsements to dysfunctional Democrat Party campaigns. After all, why admit that your endorsement is worthless when you can sell it to Kamala Harris for $1 million? But there is finally at least one Hollywood celebrity who's ready to admit what we've all known for a long time, which is that celebrity endorsements are completely pointless and meaningless, and we'd all be better off if these people would stop talking about politics entirely. And surprisingly enough, this realization comes to us from the actress Jennifer Lawrence, who until relatively recently has been one of the most hysterical leftists in Hollywood. Here's what she and her co-stars were saying just 10 years ago, for example.
Talk about laying down the law. Yep, Jennifer Lawrence, who knows a thing or two about dystopian societies, said that if Donald Trump becomes the president, it'll be the end of the world. That's right, the 25-year-old didn't hold anything back in a recent interview discussing the release of The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2. But American-born Josh Hutcherson also climbed on the anti-Trump ladder, saying he believes the campaign is a publicity stunt and can't be real.
Well, that's the kind of insightful political analysis that you can only get from Hollywood. You know, the world will end if Donald Trump wins, but of course he won't win because his campaign isn't actually real. Jennifer Lawrence was constantly repeating this kind of leftist drivel for years on end. She also stated in response to Trump's first election win that, quote, "This country was founded on immigration, and today the only people that feel safe that their rights are recognized and respected are white men." And then she added, quote, "If you're an immigrant, if you're a person of color, if you're LGBTQ+, if you're a woman, don't be afraid, be loud." So you get the idea. She was a talking points machine. But credit where it's due, Jennifer Lawrence finally appears to be tired of this whole act. Unlike every other leftist celebrity and unlike all the fake climate change scientists, Jennifer Lawrence is apparently capable of looking back on her past statements and realizing at the very least how utterly dumb and pointless they were. So this is from her recent interview with the New York Times. Listen.
You have been politically outspoken in the past. Mm-hmm. In the first Trump administration, you had a lot to say. I'm curious how you feel about talking out now.
I don't really know if I should. I think the first Trump administration was so wild, and just how can we let this stand? I felt like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. But as we've learned, election after election, celebrities do not make a difference whatsoever on who people vote for. And so then what am I doing? I'm just sharing my opinion on something that's going to just add fuel to a fire that's ripping the country apart. I mean, we are so divided.
So she isn't willing to admit that she was wrong, which obviously requires some degree of self-awareness and integrity. She's not willing to reflect on why she stated that the world was going to end if Donald Trump won, or why she said that only white men are capable of feeling safe in America. Lawrence does say that she was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, which sounds like an admission that she was acting insane and unreasonable. But beyond that, there's no reflection as to why she came to believe any of these talking points or why she repeated them. But at the same time, from a practical perspective, she is willing to acknowledge the futility of everything that she was doing, namely talking about politics. So now she's giving that up. And in part, she says that she's motivated by a desire to stop alienating half of her potential audience. Watch.
I think I'm in a complicated recalibration because I'm also an artist. And with this temperature and the way that things can turn out, I don't want to start turning people off to films and to art that could change consciousness or change the world because they don't like my political opinions. I want to protect my craft so that you can still get lost in what I'm doing, what I'm showing. And if I can't say something that's going to speak to some kind of peace or lowering the temperature or some sort of solution, I just don't want to be a part of the problem. I don't want to make the problem worse.
Well, YouTube invented the playback speed option for interviews like this one, where they're talking at half speed. You have to double the playback speed on this one if you want it to sound remotely like a normal conversation. That's the only way I was able to get through the part of this interview that I watched, which was only about 3 minutes before I had to turn it off. But I watched enough of this interview to know that Jennifer Lawrence isn't being honest here. She's not suddenly interested in attracting a conservative audience. And even if she were interested in that, she knows that none of her political opinions matter one way or another when it comes to attracting a conservative audience to her projects. Conservatives understand, and we've understood for a long time, that pretty much everybody in Hollywood hates us. That's built in. We're capable of ignoring that fact when we watch movies and television shows because unlike leftists, we don't spend every waking hour dreaming of ways to punish people who disagree with us. We're capable of watching a Jennifer Lawrence movie, as long as they're good, which one or two of them are, regardless of what dumb opinions she happens to hold. We've never took her opinion seriously to begin with. And she's flattering herself if she thinks otherwise. But as the interview went on, for some reason, she kept offering more and more justifications for why she isn't political anymore. And somehow each justification made even less sense than the last one. Watch.
It feels, the second term feels different, because it's like we all knew he said what he was going to do. We knew what he did for 4 years. He was very clear. And that's what we chose. Again, I think there's something that just feels different about the second term.
Yes, the second Trump term is different from the first term because this time around, people knew what Trump was going to do before they voted for him. And that's like totally a major difference. The first time around, people were just voting for Trump as a joke, I guess. They had no idea what his platform was. Trump voters, according to Jennifer Lawrence, weren't actually interested in bringing back manufacturing jobs or lowering taxes or ending foreign wars or putting an end to Hillary Clinton's criminal enterprise or closing the border, deporting illegal aliens, or any of that. They just voted for Trump because they like the sound of his name, I guess. And then, to their shock and horror, Trump started doing the exact same things that he said he was going to do. It's funny how that works. Now, at this point, you're probably starting to suspect that the reason she talks so slowly is that her brain is like one of those old hard drives that sputters very loudly when you turn the computer on. We're not dealing with the fastest horse in the race, to put it mildly, to mix metaphors. She doesn't seem capable of understanding that we all knew what Trump was going to do back in 2016. That's why 63 million people voted for him. And honestly, I don't expect Jennifer Lawrence to ever come to any of those realizations, nor do I care if she does. The important thing is that she recognizes, for one reason or another, that celebrities should stop sharing their opinions about any topic of significance whatsoever. Now that she's conceded defeat on this point, there's hope that many other vapid celebrities will soon follow. There's hope that we can go 24 hours without hearing about a random actor's opinion about open borders or, a non-binary singer's hot take on the Second Amendment or whatever. 10 years ago, Jennifer Lawrence confidently predicted that the world would end if Trump won. And we can safely say a decade later that, at least the world still exists, as far as I can tell. But the monoculture is indeed dead and buried. And while I used to think that was an unequivocally negative development, thanks to Jennifer Lawrence, I can see at least one faint glimmer of an upside. And that is why the era of celebrity influence over our politics is today, thankfully and belatedly, canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
Hey there, I'm Daily Wire Executive Editor John Bickley.
And I'm Georgia Howe, and we're the hosts of Morning Wire.
We bring you all the news you need to know in 15 minutes or less.
Watch and listen to Morning Wire 7 days a week, everywhere you get your podcasts.